Witkoff-Ushakov transcript sparks outrage over U.S. neutrality. Trump sets condition for meeting with Zelenskyy and Putin. On the front lines, Russia fails to prove it can hold territory. Bloomberg has released a transcript of a phone call from October 14th between Steve Witkoff, U.S. Special Envoy, and Yuriy Ushakov, Vladimir Putin's top foreign policy advisor. In a conversation lasting just over 5 minutes, Witkoff reportedly advised the Russians on how to approach President Donald Trump regarding a possible peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. The call came just before Trump spoke with Putin and amid a tense visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the White House, which proceeded in a cool atmosphere, without significant security guarantees for Ukraine. According to the transcript, Witkoff encouraged the Russians to praise Trump's peace efforts, calling him a man of peace, and expressed the deepest respect for Putin. He also confirmed telling Trump that Russia has always wanted a peace agreement.
Maybe he says to President Trump, "You know, Steve and Yuri discussed a very similar 20-point plan to peace, and that could be something that we think might move the needle a little bit. We're open to those sorts of things, to explore what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Now, me to you, I know what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Donetsk and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get to a deal here. And I think Yuri, the president, will give me a lot of space and discretion to get to the deal." Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, speaking to Yuriy Ushakov, Vladimir Putin's most senior foreign policy advisor.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio dismissed the Bloomberg report as fake news, accusing it of inventing internal divisions within Trump's team. Trump, aboard Air Force One, defended Witkoff, saying he was acting as a normal negotiator, and similar conversations happen with Ukraine. Let's hear.
You know, that's a very standard form of negotiation. I haven't heard it, but I heard it was the standard negotiation. And I would imagine he's saying the same thing to Ukraine, because each party has to give and take.
So you're worried that he's too pro-Russian?
No, I think, look, this war could go on for years. And Russia's got a lot more people, a lot more soldiers. So I think if Ukraine can make a deal, it's a good thing. I think it's great for both. Frankly, I think it's great for both. But Ukraine's got it's much smaller.
Bloomberg's release of the Witkoff-Ushakov call has left journalists stunned, revealing a U.S. envoy giving the Kremlin tips on how to handle Trump. Even in the age of Trump, just staggering. Here is Steve Witkoff, an American official, coaching a Kremlin advisor about how Putin should deal with Trump, says Oliver Carroll from The Economist. Christo Grozev, The Insider. Witkoff advising a foreign leader on how to gaslight his own president? Now, I wonder if Trump will now call for high treason charges against Witkoff. Christopher Miller from the Financial Times says Trump came to Witkoff's defense after embarrassing leaks in which the president's special envoy was caught advising Russian officials how to woo Trump, laundering a Russian peace plan, and generally illustrating how little he understands about Ukraine and Russia. Even the representative Don Bacon writes, "For those who oppose the Russian invasion and want to see Ukraine prevail as a sovereign and democratic country, it is clear that Witkoff fully favors the Russians. He cannot be trusted to lead these negotiations. Would a Russian-paid agent do less than he? He should be fired." U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell says, Trump is right that Biden's weakness emboldened enemies like Putin, but those who think pressuring the victim and appeasing the aggressor will bring peace are kidding themselves. Which difficult concessions are we pressing Russia to make? How does limiting Ukraine's defenses against future aggression increase the likelihood of enduring peace? The price and stability of peace matters, and our credibility is on the line. Allies and adversaries are watching. Will America hold firm against aggression, or will we reward it? Meanwhile, Ushakov told Russian state media that he often speaks with Witkoff, but declined to comment on the substance of the discussions. Reports indicate a prior agreement for Witkoff to visit Moscow next week. So the release of the Witkoff-Ushakov conversation exposes for Ukrainians the reality that Washington does not always act as a predictable and reliable partner. On the contrary, it can give the impression of sending mixed signals and holding informal consultations with the aggressor nation. This is especially striking given that the U.S. was one of Ukraine's key security guarantors under the Budapest Memorandum. Should a strategic ally not demonstrate transparency, consistency, and impartiality? The question is rhetorical. We also would like to hear your thoughts, so write them in the comments. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump is ready to personally meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, but only once the peace plan is fully agreed upon or enters its final stage. Trump announced this on Truth Social. He noted that his team has made significant progress over the past week in working on the agreements. To finalize the document, Trump will send his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Moscow next week for talks with Putin, and the U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll is expected to hold a meeting with the Ukrainian side.
Over the past week, my team has made tremendous progress with respect to ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. The original 28-point peace plan, which was drafted by the United States, has been fine-tuned with additional input from both sides, and there are only a few remaining points of disagreement. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelenskyy and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter, and let's all hope that peace can be accomplished as soon as possible. Donald Trump, President of the United States, on Truth Social.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is hoping to meet U.S. President Donald Trump in person as early as this week to finalize the plan for ending the war. One of the potential dates under consideration is Thanksgiving Day, which the U.S. celebrates on November 27th this year, as well as the days immediately around it. Andriy Yermak, head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, said this in an interview with the American outlet Axios. According to him, the current version of the plan aligns with Ukraine's interests and does not cross any of its red lines, except for a few issues, particularly those related to territory. That, Yermak said, is precisely the topic President Zelenskyy wants to discuss face-to-face with Donald Trump. And today, November 26th, European Union foreign ministers will discuss the peace plan for Ukraine. An extraordinary meeting of the EU Council was convened by the EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas. The meeting will take place in a virtual format. Also today, the United States and the coalition of the willing members agreed to create a working group aimed at strengthening negotiations on post-war security guarantees for Ukraine. The group will be led by France and the United Kingdom, with Turkey also participating. The United States will be joining this format for the first time. French President Emmanuel Macron emphasized that the main goal is to clearly define each side's contribution to Ukraine's security guarantees. The United Kingdom is ready to co-finance Ukraine with the EU using frozen Russian assets, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said during an online meeting of the Coalition of the Willing yesterday. He emphasized that Ukraine needs support right now to continue its fight. According to Starmer, this assistance requires urgent decisions on issues such as funding and capabilities.
We, the UK, are ready to move with the EU on providing financial support based on the value of the immobilized assets. This is the best way to show Putin he should negotiate rather than trying to outweight us. And it's the best way for us to be ready to support Ukraine in war or in peace. And we've all seen the attacks that continue day after day, night after night, particularly intense in the last week or so. And so the UK will deliver more air defense missiles in the coming week. And I urge everyone in that spirit to dig deep and see what more support you can provide, particularly now as we go into the winter.
Let's recall that the peace plan includes a point on territorial arrangements. So far, when delegations and leaders discuss this issue, Russia has been unable to demonstrate that it could enforce its claims. Russian attempts to dig in around Pokrovsk using heavy military hardware are proving unsuccessful. Despite the enemy actively bringing in tanks and armored personnel carriers in recent days, the 155th Separate Mechanized Brigade, named after Anna of Kyiv, reports that these efforts are falling short. The brigade released video footage showing Ukrainian defenders destroying this equipment south of Pokrovsk. Ukraine's defense forces continue to expand the kill zone, even beyond the front line. Dozens of Russian tanks, armored vehicles, buggies, and motorcycles are being reduced to scrap metal. Also on the Donetsk front, Russian soldiers are refusing to carry out combat missions and are leaving their positions despite orders from their commanders. This is evident from a new intercepted phone call released by Ukraine's defense intelligence. In the recording, a Russian commander can be heard angrily complaining about his subordinates, who are withdrawing to the rear without permission. He admits that over several days, the unit has failed to advance either in open terrain or through the tree line, and he threatens to classify all the troops as deserters. Altogether, the intercept points to growing problems with discipline and morale within Russian forces. On the night of November 26, unknown drones struck Cheboksary in Russia's Chuvashia region. The probable target was once again the local military factory. Earlier, in summer 2025, the VNIIR plant had already been hit by drones from the Ukrainian armed forces. The VNIIR Progress facility manufactures Kometa or Kometa-M satellite signal receivers, which are used in Shahed UAVs, Iskander-K missiles, unified guidance and correction modules for guided bombs and other precision weapons. Thanks for watching. Stay with us and subscribe so you don't miss the next news digest.